Public Relations at the Zambian Embassy in Berlin, Germany, Mr. Keleskander. Good morning. Welcome to the Diamond Breakfast.
Thank you very much.
All right. So now, Mr. Kaunda, as someone who served as Press and Public Relations Officer at the Zambian Embassy in Germany, share with us how you understood that role and how, in general, people who serve in that capacity are supposed to understand that role.
First, here's my understanding of public relations, particularly pertaining to the work of the embassy. Public relations is an organized way of contributing to a conversation that takes place in the social context in which that organization is located. In this case, the Zambian Embassy is located in Berlin, Germany. There are different conversations going on about different countries. For instance, conversations to do with investment, tourism, governance, and so on and so forth. So the role of public relations in this case is to be able to identify these conversations and then chip in from a strategic point of view. If, for instance, a conversation is about bringing investment into Africa, Zambia contributes to that conversation by saying, come to Zambia. We are naturally a destination that you would love to bring your money to. Or come to Zambia. We have all kinds of, tourism attractions. It is the only place that you can see all kinds of animals, lakes, and people are lovely. So the work of our public relations officer is to be able to listen very carefully to the conversations in the surroundings and then design the organization's interventions in those. So whatever intervention that was made, whether it is ambassador making an appearance at whatever function, I played a role in that. Whether it is during independence celebrations in terms of who comes there, I played a role in that. Whatever speech the ambassador made, I played a role in that, because it is the responsibility of public relations to contribute to conversations going on and thereby affecting people's perceptions of the country.
All right. So now most press statements that we've seen released by PR teams in these missions are usually circulated, back here in Zambia. How often is the media of the host nation really engaged by the Zambian PR team in these countries?
You see, one of the things that I discovered as a PR person in Germany is that Western media regards statements from embassies as propaganda. So they are not often inclined to taking statements. However, what happens is when you send a statement here, you also then put it on your Facebook page, also on your website. They do go to those sites. That is why a couple of times when the ambassador was called for interviews, you will notice from the questions that they actually visit the website because they have that background. So if you cannot give them that statement directly, put it on a Facebook page, put it on on a website, because they will go there eventually.
All right. And now, how possible is it for these public relations team in the missions to speak out, for instance, on what is taking place in their country without looking like they're always, defending the government of the day? You just mentioned that, those statements sometimes are perceived to be propaganda.
I think it's always a struggle to convince people to understand that government has a legitimate role to communicate. That is why public relations now must be projected as telling the truth, because society that you're communicating with has access to many different sources of information. So you cannot afford to be telling people lies. That is why when you are aware of the fact that there's a mistake that has happened in government, the best thing for you as public relations is to be able to say, we are aware of the fact that there is this development and government is investigating this issue, and in due course we'll be able to get in touch with you. What you do not want to do is to tell lies. I know that there's been this traditional practice associated with the public relations of deny, 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 deny. No, no, no. Because we are living in an information age where people have access to various forms of information, and sometimes they might even have information which is which you do not even have. The best thing, in order for you not to walk back your own lies, is to simply admit that at this point in time we're in the process of gathering information. But it's also important for people to understand that being skeptical at all times with information coming from government is not healthy. The reason is because these governments are formed by us as a people, and whatever they do is a mandate that we've given them. So if we've given them a mandate, then we might as well, you know, listen to what they have to say. Because it is not correct to think that every time a government official goes to work from 8 hours to 17 hours, 365 days in a year, that they are telling lies at all times. No, no, it's not in their best interest to do that. It is sometimes what simply happens is that governments get embarrassed by some things that happen. And in that case, like all human beings, we do not, you know, react correctly to embarrassment. It has happened before, even in this government, even in governments before, and public relations officers always have a tough time explaining some of these things.
Okay. So now, as someone who served, I know, under the leadership of the previous regime, tell me how challenging it was, you know, trying to explain to media reports of corruption, you know, in the government that you were working in, and also the treatment of opposition leaders, you know, such as at that time, the now President Hakainde Hichilema was charged with treason, you know, under the previous regime. How do you usually explain such things to, you know, where you are, you know, in those countries?
First, I must admit that those were very difficult moments for public relations. For me, at the embassy in Berlin and with Ambassador Mkwita, there were very difficult developments to explain. That is why, you know, I want to say that for you government officials, how you behave at home here will affect the effectiveness or lack of effectiveness of your public relations units out there, or even of your ambassadors out there to explain. So how did we deal with this issue, for instance, especially when HH was arrested? We did, of course, encounter these questions from time to time, and they touched on Zambia's governance. One way in which we tried to explain this was to say that, you know, every time an opposition leader is arrested, there's a tendency to ascribe those actions to the politicians in power. But we need to understand that Zambia, being a democracy, has diffused authority. Which means that if the police have taken action and you're not comfortable or happy with that action, the best thing is to be able to take the police on. Question their, you know, professional judgment for doing what they're doing. Why is it that in the West, when such a thing happens, it is the police actually that are questioned and not those in power? How many times, for instance, are the police in the US, you know, maybe shot at a black person? They've maybe reacted or acted in a manner that is not professional. How many times have those actions been ascribed to the White House? Never. They take the police on, and the police officer involved, they take them on. Now, our democracy is assumed not to have grown, that politicians are always interfering in everything. By not calling out the police, we're actually shielding them. The police, established by an act of parliament, have a professional code of conduct, whose actions, so that when they act, we use that professional conduct to judge them.
But never in the history of this country, unless I'm wrong, have we ever heard maybe a head of state come out and speak against the police arresting an opposition political party leader?
Because you see, that is also one major problem that we have in this country by our political leaders. Our political leaders, by being silent over those kinds of issues, have also exacerbated this narrative. So I think going forward, it is important that first, as citizens, we take the police on for the actions that they take. And if there is need to reform the Police Act to the point where we are able to take police arresting officers singularly responsible for those actions, so be it. So that they are not hiding. in politicians that we're getting orders and things like that. There's one government official at some point who told me something very, very cardinal that I've never forgotten to this day. He said to me, Kelly's, why is it that you journalists and the police always have to say we're getting orders from above? That's why we cannot act professionally and ethically. And yet we doctors always uphold our ethics as number one above everything else. But you imagine if we're getting orders from politicians, a number of you guys would be dying on our deathbeds. But we don't do that. So I think what needs to be done is that we need to be taking on the police for the actions. So we tried as much as possible to explain that, but the narrative generally is that when it happens in Africa, an opposition leader is arrested, then those in power are complicit. Maybe they are. But I need to tell you that you make work of public relations and embassies extremely difficult.
Okay. So now moving on from that, coming to the issue of the debt around Zambia. So the situation around Zambia's debt continues being a topical issue. How did you deal with the issue of debt, seeing that donors from other countries were also talking about it, especially at the time when we had issues going on, at the Ministry of Community Development with the social cash transfers, some donors even pulling out, the global funds issues. How were you handling it, in foreign service as PR persons?
I remember that issue, especially with the social cash transfer when it happened, that the ambassador and I sat down to discuss that issue. And so we made an initiative to go and speak to the representative of the Chancellor, Angela Merkel's representative at the Ministry of International Cooperation. Economic cooperation, sorry. We went there to discuss this issue because at that time, the German government was indicating that that money that had been misappropriated needed to be paid back before the next round of negotiations, could be embarked upon. So we went there with the ambassador to interact with the officials to explain the measures that government had taken. First, we did not beat about the bush. A wrong had been committed, and we admitted that. But most importantly, what we relayed to them was that government was going to do exactly what the German authorities wanted to do, because we had abrogated by that agreement by using that money, appropriating it for something else. So we laid down what the measures were, and they indicated the deadlines for this. So what we decided as an embassy then was to write to the Ministry of write to the Ministry of Finance through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that there's an indication from our colleagues here that they want this cooperation to continue, but we need to make amends. And I think in a few days after that, the Minister of Finance wrote back to us and indicated the various measures that have been taken, and we communicated that position. And they did confirm that yes, the money had been the money had been paid back. Right. So it was a difficult situation to deal with, and I must again emphasize that your behavior here at home as government officials sometimes complicates the work of missions out there, putting us in a very, very awkward position. And I hope that everybody else that is going now will be of the same understanding, and government officials now will be debating these issues so that they understand that their behavior does affect how organizations or our foreign missions operate out there.
All right. So now with the new government in place, how should we be reading its foreign policy? Right now?
First, Zambians need to understand that the first time that we had an organized document, I know there was a codification of principles of foreign policy back, I think, in 1969, but the formal document was, I think, done in 1996. And then when MMD came into power in 1991, and then in 2014, the PF government revised that policy document. So the starting point is, if Zambians want to understand the Zambian foreign policy, please access the 2014 revised foreign policy document. That's one. Secondly, when the president made his inaugural address to the United Nations, that provided the framework of how Zambia will be engaging with the rest of the world on contemporary political and economic issues affecting the globe. He talked about issues of governance. He talked about Zambia's engagement in, regional peace initiatives. He actually mentioned the conflict in the northern part of Mozambique and that Zambia was going to continue seeking peaceful resolution of those conflicts. He also talked about commitment to issues of climate change, the issues of youth empowerment, the issues of gender equality. Now, these are contemporary global issues. So when you read that statement, it provides a framework of how this government's foreign policy is going to be. But in the main, Zambia's foreign policy has remained consistent. I know that how Zambia voted at the United Nations recently on the issue of Russia-Ukraine raised a lot of dust, that Zambia departed from a position of neutrality that we've always maintained. And for me, the answer is yes and no. Yes, because when you realize that these are geopolitical conflicts where you have two superpowers fighting a proxy war, the position that we've taken as a neutral one. But the position that the Zambian government took could also indicate consistency in the sense that Zambia has always stood on the side of non-violence. Kaunda's philosophy was always non-violence. So when government voted in the manner that it did, it was indicating that we've always indicated that our way of resolving our, whatever conflict in the world is going to be diplomatic and it's going to be peaceful.
All right. Now, just on another note, on a lighter note, now you manage the Facebook page, for the embassy, Zambian, the embassy in Berlin. Sometimes you'd post pictures of, Ambassador Mkwita in his, fancy suits with his wife, and they looked like they were having a good time that side. And, people sort of thought that was a little bit like personalizing the page, because we know that ambassadors are there on official duty, but then pictures would depict more of a personal life around the life of the ambassador and the wife. What was that about?
I used to get those comments often. But see, one thing that I noted about Ambassador Mkwita and his wife is that they were very well dressed most of the time. It was very difficult to find them in a place where they had ill-fitting clothing and stuff like that. And a lot of people in Berlin actually took note of that. And there were a lot of diplomats that would even say to me that, you Zambians really know how to dress, eh? And I would say, but listen, it's the same suits. And we buy them from, same places. I don't really know what the difference is. Perhaps because the ambassador always dressed in suits that were properly fitting. But also one important thing that people should understand is this, that dress code for diplomats is a big issue. Before you are posted into diplomatic service, you go to ZDIS there is a whole course on just dress code. Your suit, your socks, the length of your trousers, the length of your, of the jacket here, the colors, how you combine them, even how you smell, a haircut. It's so much detailed that for those diplomats that take that seriously, they always look the way Ambassador Mkwita is looking. But I also noticed that there's some diplomats that will throw that etiquette to the winds. Come to the office, maybe same necktie for so many days, maybe same suit for so many days, and But for me, what I liked is that Ambassador Mkwita took that seriously, and I loved using those pictures because they also helped to drive traffic to the page. There's some people that just love looking at the suits. When you are communicating, you don't just communicate. So
you're also doing it for likes for the page.
Yeah, because it does help drive, drive traffic to the page. And as people go to the page, they also find captions. Yeah. Because these were not just pictures that didn't have a caption. They always had a caption. They always had text to them. So I was doing that. Some people thought that he's the one that was doing that. No, no, no. I'm the one that was deciding I'm going to use this picture. Sometimes I would even tell him I'm going to use this picture for ABC. I know some people might say this and that, but it's part of the conversation. Looking nice, beautiful, handsome, and stuff like that. For me, it's a communication too. So if I can find a principal I'm working with, who dresses good, looks good. And also, I liked those pictures where he was with his wife because I was communicating something. There's something that I was communicating, our family values. I'd seen a lot of ambassadors there who would appear at functions without their wives. There are a lot of diplomats out there that live like bachelors and yet they are married. Why do you leave your spouse behind? One thing I loved about Ambassador Mkwita and his wife is that they were normally together. And whatever place that we went to, even if government didn't have money to pay for his wife, he paid. A few times when we went to functions, like maybe outside Berlin, and he's alone, he was always at his lowest, you know, emotionally. But every time the wife was around, yeah, it was a good time.
Okay, so now finally, just reflecting maybe, you know, on the journey, could you just share with us, you know, some of the important highlights that you had, maybe in like a minute or so?
You know, Zambia has a lot going for it. But I think what we haven't done is to leverage those values of peace, you know, stable political environment. I do not think that we understand the strategic importance of those values in attracting investment in this country. I must be able to state that at the global stage, there are huge resources that if we are very strategic in our engagement, very strategic in the manner that we pick diplomats, in the manner in which you know, foreign affairs interacts with its missions, and in the manner in which State House also understands foreign policy, if we were to be very strategic, you know, in those three areas, it is possible to be able to tap into those global resources and transform Zambia from a third world that it is to a first world that it ought to be.
All right, thank you so much for coming through.
You're welcome, Francesca.
Right. I was talking to the former First Press Secretary, Public Relations at the Zambian Embassy in Berlin, Kelly Kaunda. The Diamond Breakfast continues on the other side. We do have Matthias Kamanga from the Drug Enforcement Commission, who is coming to talk to us about investigations that are currently going on, you know, with people who are suspected to have acquired wealth, you know, using crime. So we'll be getting to that. And remember that you can be a part of this conversation by dropping us a message on our Facebook page. We'll be able to open our phone lines later, as well as reading those messages. So please do stick around. Diamond Breakfast will